Hello and welcome to another edition of Agenda 2063 TV show, the only show in Ghana, the region, the continent telling you authentic stories about Africa's integration. But even though we spent the better part of the series seeking to unpack areas around intra-African trade and after, we've always come back to the issue of Agenda 2063 because we believe it is the most important conversation to have in unpacking Africa's integration. We hope today's show will be one of those editions. We'll be happy to be coming your way in your laptops, throughout your whatever platforms you may use. My name is E.K. Banser Jr. Happy to be coming your way today. We're going to take a break in a minute. We'll be right back with the two segments. Then we'll deep dive into the editorial for the day. We'll be right back. Okay, so welcome back from the break. So our first segment here on East Africa, just a couple of developments happening around East Africa. Some very interesting issues in that part of the region. They say that on Twitter, monitoring East Africa on Twitter, one Nelson Bwire Kapo has been tweeting that Ugandans are the happiest in East Africa, according to a World Happiness Report. They say that Rwanda was ranked the unhappiest country in the Six-Nation East Africa Community bloc and the fourth worst globally, ahead of Zimbabwe, Lebanon, and Afghanistan, which are the three unhappiest countries in the world. Wow, very, very interesting. Ugandans being happier than a lot of other countries. Moving on, Somalia has resumed exportations of bananas to Saudi Arabia. Somalia was the largest banana exporter in East Africa, employing over 120,000 workers and earned $96 million annually. Of course, these bananas I see are green. It could be that they're plantain. Whatever case they may be, it is still bananas. And Somalia has been playing a great game in this, earning $96 million annually and employing a lot of people, 120,000 workers. We hope in an era of after, we're happy that these important things are happening. One Rebecca Alitwala Kadaga has tweeted that the official opening of the Office of the Secretariat of the Climate Change East Africa office in Nakasero took place a few days ago, which will help highlight the importance that East Africa is attaching to climate change, which is very good. For Oxfam International, tweeting that while the world watches Ukraine, East Africa's hunger crisis seems to have been put on the back burner, which is a sad reality. Only 3% of the current UN appeal for East Africa is funded. Nearly 45 million people, battered by the worst drought in 40 years, need help too. Hashtag hunger crisis. And Oxfam is saying that as many as 28 million people across East Africa are starving, which is a very serious case that needs to be attended to. The presidency of Rwanda has been tweeting that President Kagame arrived in Akaba, Jordan, where he met with His Majesty King Abdullah ahead of the Akaba process meeting on East Africa, which is taking place this week. The bilateral meeting discussed enhancing ongoing areas of cooperation between Jordan and Rwanda. And during the Akaba process meeting on East Africa, President Kagame and President Tshisekedi held a cordial and productive meeting on bilateral and regional cooperation. Still on East Africa, there's some people expressing their views about developments in the region. One lady by the name of Nazra Dahir has written, "This is what I want to see: two countries that support two countries that support each other, two Somali nations in East Africa." Somalia and another country that we're seeing there. The DR Congo will officially be admitted to the East Africa community next week, adding a 90 million market for the bloc, which means that in an era of AFTA, this is very, very critical because inter-African trade basically is about countries, trading among and within each other. So seeing this new development where DRC building linkages around electricity, across the continent, and then also adding itself to the East Africa community, is going to be a major development in that part of the region that we all need to watch. And a couple of other tweets just before we close the segment is that there's a training for the assessment of life skills and values in East Africa district drive running. That was run at Rida Hotel in Sita for those who needed capacity building and problem solving, and they did it specifically for the region. Then finally, some other tweets which are indicating, still more tweets saying that Uganda is the happiest country in East Africa, which has been a good form of propaganda for those who are seeking to promote the president's work there. So that's about it with East Africa. I'm sure I'll be able to give you in the next edition some more updates, including the fact that Uganda is coming closer to domestic vehicle manufacturing in East Africa with the delivery of a built unit and construction of a 90-seater bus by Kira Motors in Kampala. So Uganda is doing well building locally made buses, which is something that I think all African countries should aspire to do. Well done, Uganda, and well done for being selected one of the happiest countries in East Africa. So that's the break of the segment that we have with East Africa. We're going to take a quick break, then we come back with brief of developments with APRM. We'll be right back. So welcome back from the break, and what I can tell you is that last week was a very busy week for the Africa Peer Review Mechanism. So for this segment of the Africa Peer Review Mechanism Watch, there's going to be concise, succinct information. So last week, Accra, in the past 2 weeks, Accra and Senegal have been, if you want the synosia of very important information around APRM, because Accra hosted two-day meeting. One was on credit ratings in Africa. The other one was on sensitization of corporate governance principles on the continent, led by Africa Peer Review Mechanism. The credit rating one was really looking at why credit rating agencies such as Fitch and Moody have downgraded a lot of African countries without any of their analysts stepping foot on the continent. They're just looking at specific parameters such as political risk and all these things, which, African countries are much more than these things, these parameters. So it's not, it's unfair for Fitch and Moody to be downgrading countries. And the latest country that it downgraded was Ghana. Moody downgrading Ghana for a very low rating. I believe it was C- or something like that. And I remember that APRM issued a statement to that effect, criticizing the fact that this is a number. This is not the first time that these foreign credit rating agencies are downgrading African countries when they don't really have a sense of what they are doing in the country. Sure, African countries have challenges. We have debt. We have all these issues that are happening. But when you keep downgrading a member state, an African country, what it does is that it makes it difficult for them to go out onto the market to get credit. So you reduce the risk of their ability to get credit. And that cannot always be happening. It is not possible that every African country is doing so badly that it has to be getting a negative rating from a credit rating agency. That cannot be the point all the time. So this is what one of the things that made the important news for the first day of the meeting that APRM held in Accra, and the second day was looking really at corporate governance principles. What is it that Africa needs to do to make sure that it leads an ethical-based appreciation of how to run companies? If you're running a company, what do you need to do to make sure you have filed your tax returns, you have done the right things? Do you have succession planning? what things have you done to make sure that your company is based on ethics rather than just for profit, that kind of thing. So it is this same format that APRM used to have a meeting in Senegal for the Francophone audience as well. Senegal has also been very critical of the way Moody, Fitch, and all these credit rating agencies have been, downgrading African countries. So it made sense to have Ghana, the sensitization meeting, be held in one Anglophone country in West Africa and another Anglophone country in another Francophone country in West Africa to help amplify the conversation. We are not quite sure when next APRM will hold these 2-day sensitization meetings. It could be an East African country or Central African one or North African. We're not quite sure. But what these 2 sensitization meetings say is that APRM is taking seriously the important development of needing to set up its own credit, the AU setting up its own credit rating agency. Ghana, about a month ago, announced to the press that they were going to set up a credit rating agency in Ghana. I don't know how far these plans are advanced, but what we can say is that the African Union has taken great interest through the APRM, so plans are quickly moving ahead to make sure that African countries finally get their own credit rating agency without needing to refer to all these international ones of Fitch and Moody, who will be downgraded more than they will be upgrading. So that really is the APRM Watch update. I'm going to take a quick break in a minute and be right back with a deep dive into a related subject of the APRM meeting that took place last 2 weeks. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back from the break, and my name is E.K. Benson Jr., and I'm happy to be coming your way once again. So welcome to the editorial part of the show today. And in this short editorial, what I'm seeking to do is to help unpack for audiences the role of the African Peer Review Mechanism, APRM, and why that AU agency continues to be an important actor and player in the conversation on building Africa's governance. Already, what I can tell you is that in Senegal and Accra, two meetings were held over the past 2 weeks. In fact, it was just a couple of days ago that APRM staff returned back to South Africa from a meeting in Senegal, one which was very similar to the ones that had been held in Accra the week prior. What they went to do was to hold these sensitization meetings on credit rating agencies and corporate governance. What I can say is that with these 2 sensitization missions in West Africa, Francophone and Anglophone, we understand that the missions are not going to end with the ECOWAS region, but be continent-wide, with speculation probably of more sensitization in East Africa, probably in the second quarter of the year. What it's also saying for us is that ahead of the 20th anniversary of the African Peer Review Mechanism, which will be held in 2023, these missions will remain a very important test case of whether APRM is gaining traction on its corporate governance agenda. International credit rating agencies are part of the conversation on corporate governance because they are a subset, if you will. Because when you enable member states to get credit easily from international markets, and it is done in a transparent manner, that is enhancing corporate governance. Then there's the larger corporate governance agenda as well, or that Africa Peer Review Mechanism is working on, where there are principles, about 9 principles, and member states need to know how these principles work and how they can also lead more ethically based institutions and organizations. But what we can also say is that at first glance, APRM's credit rating advocacy appears to be a tad mysterious and difficult, designed to confuse those of us who are not economists. about Africa's financial system. But when you look a little bit more closely, what you see is that it reveals how it is repeating the familiar narrative of Western parties seeking to influence Africa's access to credit. Once African member states have access to credit, you can imagine what they can do. They will not always have to go to the IMF and all these countries, other multilateral institutions, to borrow money because credit is there. And their access to credit depends on the ratings that these credit rating agencies give them. If it's negative, it'll affect them in a way that they cannot get access to credit. But if it's positive or median range, by all means, they will readily get access to credit. That's why it's so important we fix that story and fix it in a way that it is clear that there is an AU agency set up to help, get member states access to credit by positively and transparently looking at how they are managing their governance and whether, therefore, they deserve to get access to credit. Only an African agency can do this. You can't expect a Western one to do that and be downgrading so many of the ratings of the member states. So, like I said, the closer look tells us this familiar story of Western parties seeking to influence Africa's access to credit with a mere rating based on figures that are usually cooked by Western analysts who have never stepped foot in any of the countries that they forecast for downgrade. Excuse me. But Senegal and Ghana are just two of the countries that have recently complained. But other countries that have complained over the past couple of years, since 2015, between 2015 and 2018, include Zambia, Namibia, Nigeria, and Tanzania. For Zambia, in 2015, the Zambian government urged investors to ignore unsolicited credit downgrade from the rating agencies. It challenged the correctness of its rating, which it said had not been discussed with the country's representatives. For Namibia, in 2017, Namibia rejected Moody's decision to downgrade the country's credit rating to junk status, and it said that the downgrade was contrary to its generally stable economic outlook. For Nigeria, the government of Nigeria also strongly disagreed with its downgrading. It questioned both the general rating premises as well as the agency's conclusions, because it looks once again that some analysts who had never stepped foot in these African countries were just making up the stories as they went along. The government believed the economy had successfully emerged from a recession and had recorded important improvements across a broad range of sectors. So the downgrade did not make sense for Nigeria. It didn't make sense for Namibia, and it didn't make sense for Zambia. And I will finally show you one last country that it didn't make sense for, and that's Tanzania. In 2018, Tanzania criticized Moody's decision to assign a low credit rating with a negative outlook on the country's first international credit rating. Tanzania rejected the rating. It argued that it hadn't been thoroughly consulted. So what we can see is an emerging pattern for the past number of years where either member states are not consulted, they're not informed. All they see is just something in the press that the credit rating is downgraded for whatever reason, without really explaining to them why the reasons for this downgrade. This will not help African member states, get access to credit when there's always a downgrade. It is not to say that member states are always right and their economies are always on the right track. Sometimes their economies are difficult. They owe a lot of money, there's debt, but at least not everything about the economy can always be totally bad. So you need to be a bit more balanced. And at the end of the day, what we are seeing and what we heard from the meeting with the APRM, the African Peer Review Mechanism, firmly stating that the plans are underfoot to establish an African credit rating agency managed by the AU, is good news, because what it means is that the information will be a lot more balanced, because it's the AU speaking to member states about their access to credit in a way that Fitch and Moody and these international credit rating agencies cannot do. Therefore, the outlook is likely to be more balanced. It is not always going to be positive, of course, but it'll be more balanced than what it currently is. So this can only be great news for credit rating, and also the work that APRM is doing on credit rating. It's a very big boon or encouragement to APRM to know that it is finally helping solve the questions and the frustrations that member states have been experiencing with these credit rating agencies. What we can say finally is that the data has shown that the rating agencies have downgraded more countries than they have upgraded over the past 24 years. There have been 47 downgrades compared to only 22 upgrades and 113 negative changes in outlooks. Only 9 positive changes have been recorded, and that certainly cannot be good enough. Once again, the AU needs to fast-track the process of establishing an African credit rating agency managed by the AU, and the African peer review mechanism is at the forefront of leading this. So we are happy to hear that the missions in Senegal and Accra have ended. It is likely that many more missions will take place in the latter part of the year. From what we have seen with Tanzania, Zambia, Nigeria, and Namibia, it could be that Southern Africa countries could also be visited for sensitization missions. But what is clear is that the agenda of corporate governance for the African peer review mechanism is big and it's huge, and sometimes it's daunting, but it needs to be done. Right now, we are happy to read that the African peer review mechanism is the only AU agency tasked by AU member states of the Assembly at the highest level to look at all aspects of Africa's governance, whether it's at the level of in Ghana, at the district level, regional level, and all these other issues, and in Kenya at the county level. For all member states, APRM is the only agency mandated to look at governance at the local level and at the regional level and at the continental level as well. But governance generally is what the APRM has also been tasked with. So credit rating is part of governance, of the corporate governance agenda, and corporate governance is an even bigger agenda for the APRM as well. What we can also tell you is that the peace and security agenda has lots of elements of governance. Peace and security does not work outside the arena of good governance. Both of them need to work together. And that is why AU member states tasked APRM to also work on that. So I can tell you that as we speak, there's a meeting going on in Cape Town, 2-day meeting, where the APRM is discussing unconstitutional changes in government with the AU's Peace and Security Council, where they will then begin to come out with an important report that will look at the way forward on some of these coups that have been happening in West Africa and on the continent over the past year or so, to say that firm no against what they call UCG, unconstitutional changes of government, and a lot of research that will indicate that, hey, Africa is not in favor of unconstitutional changes in government, whether it's tweaking the constitution or whether it's coups, and that all member states need to come together and work to ensure that there's better governance on the continent, so that this better governance can lead to greater peace and security, which we all want and need, as is consistent with Aspiration 3 of Agenda 2063, which calls for good governance on the continent. So you will see from this editorial that, once again, we have touched on the important issue of Agenda 2063. There are 7 aspirations, and it's important to sometimes unpack some of these stories to help people appreciate why these aspirations are important. We cannot do them all in one day or 1 month, but we'll take it one aspiration at a time if you want. And today we looked at Aspiration 3. We have sometimes looked at Aspiration 4, which looks to peaceful and secure Africa. Today's is a blend of 4 and 3, but more 3 than anything. Who knows what other aspiration we'll be talking about in another editorial, another interview, where we'll be listening more to someone else than me, speaking more about what's happening with some of these aspirations of Agenda 2063. My name is Ike Benson Jr. Happy to be coming your way today, and anytime that you check out tv.aau.org programming, you see a lot of films and a lot of stories, a lot of material there as well from the programming that AAU has been doing. Thank you to the production team and to all those who make this possible. We hope to speak to you next time, and do drop us a line when you can at _AAU67 and AAU TV official on Instagram. Hope to speak to you next time. My name is Ike Bensa Jr. Goodbye.